Bitcoin has absolutely soared in value recently, and it's been a hot topic of discussion for many investors and many people curious about the cryptocurrency. It easily surpassed its 2018 all-time high, and many people are asking if this is something they should buy into. And not only has it soared in value, but tons and tons of traditional payment processors like PayPal are allowing you to pay and utilize cryptocurrencies. And a lot of people, especially in the investment space, are asking, should I invest in Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin an investment? What is it exactly? There's massive hype around Bitcoin, and it has grown like crazy. And unlike 2018, where we saw a pretty massive crash, there's a lot of interest in Bitcoin, but also a lot of corporate backing. PayPal and Square are definitely huge examples of companies that are embracing this digital currency. And we're even seeing cryptocurrencies adopted on traditional trading platforms used for stocks typically, like Webull. If you want to get started on Webull, I have a referral link in the description below. We also have all these huge claims coming out of traditional banking infrastructure, like JP Morgan saying Bitcoin could surge to these ridiculous prices over the long term. And it does seem like more and more large corporations are actually thinking about using Bitcoin as a store of value compared to cash, or maybe even just holding and experimenting with Bitcoin as a store of value. It's no secret that a ridiculous amount of money was printed in 2020, and there are concerns about inflation. It's not necessarily as straightforward as printing money results in inflation, because there's a lot of demand for USD globally, and there's a bit of nuance. It's hard to say exactly what will happen, but there's definitely a lot of scary things that could occur because of all this money printing. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is an algorithm where we know how much is going to be produced. Its total output is 100% predictable. Apologies if this is a lot to take in. I mainly want to talk about why cryptocurrencies are surging in price. There's a lot going on with them, and they can be kind of confusing. If you want to go through the basics, there's a lot of different guides to blockchain and how it works. But to give a quick summary, Bitcoin is a fully digital currency. Among the first, really. It uses blockchain technology, which involves a completely decentralized array of computers working together to actually process transactions and secure the network. So whenever you make a transaction on Bitcoin, whenever you move Bitcoin between digital wallets, there's a bunch of computers processing that transaction and confirming the transaction is legitimate. These transactions are a bunch of blocks that get sent out and processed, and you pay a fee to process those transactions. In addition, anyone processing them has a chance to receive some Bitcoin. So that's the incentive for spending all this energy and power in order to process these transactions. And while it might sound insecure at first, it is all completely open source and decentralized. So the source code has been around forever. Bitcoin is actually pretty dang old, and it has been around for a while. And it's actually been used as a currency for a very, very long time. Trillions and trillions of dollars have processed through Bitcoin transactions. Now, there are potential vulnerabilities, such as 51% attacks, which, if you can think, if you're using a bunch of computers that are completely separate and decentralized to confirm that everything is correct and that the transactions are legitimate, if you owned a majority of that computational power, you could inject fake transactions into the network. But because of Bitcoin's size, because of how huge it is, and how many people across the globe are utilizing it, it's not really feasible for Bitcoin. That would be an astronomical amount of computational power, even for a nation to produce. However, there are these alternative coins out there that are really small, that don't have huge followings. And an example of one of these was Feathercoin, which is actually hit by a 51% attack. Feathercoin was so small and had so little people competing in the network that there was a singular group out there that was capable of doing a 51% attack. And when you have a cryptocurrency this small and still developing, yeah, there are singular groups out there that can take control of the network and introduce a lot of issues. And that's probably one of the reasons why Bitcoin, despite some of its shortcomings, is still the top cryptocurrency in terms of market cap it has been used for years and years and years. It is a very proven and very reliable, useful tool. Now, there are a lot of alternative coins, some of which have been around for quite a while, and some have pretty large market caps, like Ethereum, which offers all sorts of other sophisticated things using blockchain technology. Now, should you invest in Bitcoin or crypto in general? Well, it's kind of complicated to price Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of these other cryptocurrencies. They aren't like traditional assets or companies that have finances and other typical fundamentals. So when you're actually trying to evaluate a price target for cryptocurrencies, it gets kind of weird. The actual transactions they process per day is actually pretty impressive. Now, there is some arguments against how much power it consumes per transaction compared to something like Visa, but you also have to consider that Visa is a company. It's not decentralized. And there's a lot that goes into a Visa transaction beyond just the data center computational power. There's different banks and payment processors, physical locations out there that maybe make each Visa transaction consume more power than you might expect. So it's hard to make a direct comparison. But Bitcoin definitely processes tons and tons of different transactions, massive transactions globally without any huge issues. Bitcoin alone handles a lot of transactions, many in the millions and millions of dollars. All of these process constantly. And it's not just the size of the transactions and the amount of transactions, it's the fact that there are tons happening around the world. Money being sent from different continents without issue. There's tons of different visualization software out there that you can just open in your web browser and see all these transactions happening and going on. It's really fascinating to see it in person, since it's all digital. However, Bitcoin in particular has some scalability issues. It's very difficult for it to scale up to a huge amount of users. The transaction speeds have gotten slower and slower over years, and fees have gotten much higher over the years, simply because there's such an insane amount of users. In fact, there's entire wiki articles about different techniques used to reduce transaction fees. There's tons and tons of very interesting math and ideas that have come up, and the genius thing about them is they're completely backwards compatible. So as long as you have an updated new wallet, and the person you're sending the coins from is utilizing this new technique, it can work flawlessly with old and new. Although you both need updated wallets if you want to utilize a lot of these different techniques to lower fees. And crypto is quite the market. It is very strange sometimes. Cryptos like Bitcoin were intended to just be a digital currency, whereas cryptos like Ethereum have all sorts of different digital contracts that can be created and tokens and other things. You can program features into your currency. And this is true of a lot of other crypto. Some have very clever ideas with large support. Others are clever ideas with small support. And there are some cryptos out there that are blatant scams, just cash grabs. Although most of those are very small, tiny cryptos. Like I wouldn't say Ethereum or Bitcoin or any of those are scams. But there is an absurd amount of cryptocurrencies out there, like an insane amount. And anyone can make a cryptocurrency because it's all decentralized. Like I said before, Bitcoin is all completely open source. So if you want to make your own cryptocurrency, you could just copy paste the Bitcoin source code and use any of the wallets already programmed out there and make your own cryptocurrency. You can name it whatever you want. Now, would it be worth anything? Well, that depends if you can get any adoption for it. And if you're just copying Bitcoin, it would actually be very unsafe to make a new tiny currency because you're susceptible to 51% attacks. There are other currencies like Ethereum that are trying to use different techniques to mitigate that. They're using proof of stake instead of mining, but that gets very, very technical. There are a lot of smart people out there trying to solve these sort of issues, but if your coin is tiny and doesn't get a lot of support, people are going to kind of default to Bitcoin because it's proven effective and has the largest user base. But coins like Ethereum are sort of catching up. They're very, very useful, very sophisticated, and can deal with a lot of things better than Bitcoin can. But again, Bitcoin is proven and has a huge user base. And just because a coin has a massive market cap doesn't mean it is invulnerable from any sort of scrutiny or charges. The SEC actually charged Ripple and two executives, which tanked the price of Ripple. Now, the whole idea behind these coins is being decentralized, so theoretically, if the founders were completely axed, it would still proceed forward, but sometimes without clear leadership, it can be kind of difficult to proceed forward. There's a lot of nuance, because the creator of Bitcoin was completely anonymous. He or she did not want their name out there at all, and we have no idea who they are. We just have their code, which has been used and developed over the years by the community. And because of that, it's been a very slow but stable development. If someone introduces this new code to lower transaction fees, but there's concerns about security about it, then people won't adopt it and it won't have a negative impact on the network at all. We have obviously seen a huge run-up in cryptocurrencies, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do hit pretty heavy values. But you have to realize, whenever you have a run-up, there is always likely going to be a correction around the corner. We've had pretty consistent gains for the past few months now, and I would not be surprised if we see a pretty huge dip. But then again, it wouldn't be shocking if we see more and more run-up as these big cryptos get their value reevaluated by huge companies that are kind of scared of USD or other currencies out there right now. Without a doubt, blockchain technology is really incredible. It is very powerful, very useful, and there are tons and tons of very clever ideas currently being used with blockchain technology. Not just digital currencies, but all sorts of other contracts digitalized and stored in a blockchain. And the whole cryptocurrency scene has gotten a lot better. I remember back in the day, I actually mined Bitcoins on GPUs. And I remember losing a bunch of Bitcoin. It wasn't worth much at the time. Now it would probably be hundreds or thousands of dollars. But at the time, I lost that to Bitcoin because it was in Mt. Gox. I also lost some in a mining pool, which is basically people come together to utilize their resources and distribute their mining rewards. Well, I lost all of that when the dude in charge of the pool just vanished. He took all the coin with him and he left. So it was definitely a Wild West and a messy, messy space just a couple years ago. It was a different world. There was not this huge company support. There wasn't all these institutions making use of crypto and adopting blockchain. There were these tons and tons of small little, oftentimes scammy groups that were utilizing crypto. But we've seen a lot of adoption, and the infrastructure we currently have for cryptocurrency is completely different from what we had in 2018. 2018, we saw tons of hype and tons of companies and people looking into the technology, but we simply didn't have the infrastructure developed to make it super useful for an everyday person. Like I said, that was still the stage when there were a lot of small, scammy groups involved in crypto that got away with things because it's almost completely anonymous. And we saw a huge dip. But we've gotten to this stage again where people are realizing how useful crypto is, and it's been creeping into all of these institutions and been used like crazy. And I do expect we'll probably have some dip, but I don't think it will be on the magnitude of that 2018 dip, where we saw a huge, huge, huge collapse of the price for a year straight, basically. There's definitely a lot of blockchain that is going to stay in traditional markets. It's simply a useful technology that has been proven for a long time now. So it's hard to say. If you have any questions or concerns about Bitcoin or other cryptos, it might be best to stay out of it. It helps to have a healthy understanding of how it works and what it can be used for. But if you've never heard of it, you just want to buy in because it's up a 100% or whatever within the past week or so, you got to be careful. You know, you could be buying at the top, and what if you sell at the bottom? There's a lot of potential and a lot of useful technology here, but we've seen a huge run-up, so don't be surprised if we see a huge correction. Although I am skeptical that we will see a huge, huge drop like we did in 2018, simply because so many more mainstream institutions have adopted this useful technology. And it's easier than ever to use cryptocurrencies right now. Back when I was messing around with these, the wallet sucked. It was so confusing to get things set up. There were tons and tons of these scammy like mining pools, and trading places. It was developing, and it was a wild west that was horrifically messy. But now things have gotten very, very smooth. It is not difficult at all to open like an Ethereum wallet, and you don't need to use tons and tons of space on your computer because of these light wallet techniques. It's developed and gotten a lot better. But again, just because something has developed and gotten better doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get tons and tons of support or that it's going to go up indefinitely. There's a lot that remains to be seen, but I would be cautious. If you aren't super knowledgeable about crypto, you got to be careful about it because we can see huge, huge volatility. Could you imagine buying at the top of the Ethereum prices here and then having it collapse all the way down here, literally falling by an order of magnitude? Unless you're dealing with penny stocks, that's typically not something you see in the stock market. So do your due diligence, do your research, and try to evaluate why you would view a certain cryptocurrency at a specific price. There's a lot of cool technology here and a lot of potential, especially compared to a lot of these traditional payment processors. There's something very nice about being decentralized and being able to move money across borders without any issue, especially with massive transactions. But you also have to be realistic on how much is hype, how much is legitimate usage, and whether or not we're going to see more and more corporate money fall into crypto. If you want to jump into the stock market and get started trading, Webull is a fantastic brokerage option. If you sign up using the referral link in the description below, you'll receive 4 free stocks. 2 of them will be valued between $2.50 to $250, and the other 2, as part of the deposit bonus, will be valued between $800 and $1,600. That's $2,100 to $3,700 just for signing up. Again, the link is in the description below, and happy trading.